Up from where we left off last time, because when I saw you guys last week, we were taking a look at how Fort Sumter is going to be really the spark that begins this war. Now remember, from when I saw you guys last time, and we were going through Fort Sumter, we can see that this spark is really something that's been building and building for some time. But the thing about it is, this spark is going to come in such a way that makes it a little bit bizarre. Now, I have to ask, do you guys remember, how long did the bombardment last at Fort Sumter?
34
Excellent. 34-hour bombardment of Fort Sumter. Now, with that said, in those 34 hours, how many Union soldiers died?
None.
Zero.
That's why the word is.
So how does the war start?
Because during the 21 gun salute,
Bigger than that.
50 guns,
Even bigger.
200 guns,
Smaller.
100.
The 100-gun salute, yes.
100 gun salute. One of the cannons blew up, killing 2 Union soldiers, which got to the end. It was in Confederate territory, which meant that they started the war.
We really don't have any options anymore. War has come. It's just a matter of how we're going to deal with this. Now, I will say this. When Lincoln is putting together this plan for how to fight the war, he believes that it will be a short conflict, that the South simply doesn't have what it takes to compete. Now, on paper, he's right. But at the same time, he and his generals are going to sit down and come up with one of 3 prongs. The first prong that they have is they say, we need to use our superior navy. We need to blockade the southern coasts. We need to be certain that nothing comes in and nothing gets out. We need to slowly strangle the South. They come up with their Anaconda plan. Now, I will say this. The plan itself is wise. It's very shrewd. It's what they should do. But it's going to take a long time to actually bear fruits. What the Anaconda plan is designed to do is simply stop international trade. Because the southern states have this obvious weakness. They don't have the industry to compete with the North. They don't have what it takes to make the weapons of war. They simply don't have it. Where were the southern states getting all their manufactured goods before the war started? The North. Now that the North is their enemy, they're not going to supply them with tools of war. They got to get them from somewhere else. Now I'm going to ask you guys, do you remember, where are they looking for? Who do they think might be their best ally in this war? The Confederacy, I mean. The Brits and the French. Now the Brits and the French are industrialized powers. They have what it takes to supply the South with what they need. But there's going to be a bit of a caveat to this. First, I want to ask, what is the South going to promise the Brits and the French in exchange for these industrial goods? Oh, no. It's illegal.
It's illegal in Britain.
In Britain and France, it's illegal by then. There is a natural good that the South has lots of. What was it? Yes, Bella? Cotton. They said, we will supply you with all the cotton you need if you just get us these supplies. Now, let me just play this game. Is that bad news for the North if they can export cotton for war goods?
Yes.
Yes.
That's why they want it.
So stop it from happening. Blockade the southern ports. Strangle the South. But like I say, it's going to take some time. In order for this plan to be effective, the North has to be a little bit patient. Now, like I was saying, Lincoln thought this would be a short war. He thought the North would crush the South. He didn't necessarily believe that this plan would have the time to really bear fruit. But just in case, you better put this blockade in place. Keep the Brits and the French on the sidelines. Keep them out of the war. If the Brits and or the French get involved, we now have what was a small or local problem into an international ordeal. We gotta be certain they stay out of this.
So basically, it would go from a civil war to a world war.
To an Atlantic war, yes, against some of the biggest powers in the world. We don't want that, so you gotta keep them out. Now, let's again kind of play the other side here. Does the Confederacy need the Brits and the French?
Yes.
Oh yeah. This is where the war is going to tilt very early on. If the Brits and the French get involved, we got problems. So we gotta keep them out. Now, it's at this point where these these Union generals are gonna launch the second prong of their plan. They want to control the Mississippi River. Now, as you guys have read previously, controlling the Mississippi is an absolute must for the North, for really a handful of reasons. One, the Mississippi is the major waterway going north and south throughout the entire country. Whoever controls that controls the biggest highway in the Western world. You have to have your ships steaming on the Mississippi. But at the same time, we have Confederate states that are west of the Mississippi. If Union ships control the Mississippi, they're isolated. Divide and conquer. Have you heard this phrase before?
My dad uses it a lot.
Divide and conquer. Now, as we kind of look at this, you can see that, yeah, the North has all these advantages, but the South is not without their advantages as well. What we're going to see at the first major conflict of this war is going to be where the South plays the advantages they have. Now, first, I want to say this. We're going to be taking a look at two theaters of war. Two different geographical areas where the war is happening, at least on a large scale. There is the Eastern Theater, which is right in here. Now, this doesn't necessarily do it that much justice because it's going to be in Virginia, up into Pennsylvania, and into Maryland. Now, like I say, this is not where all the conflicts are, but this is where the major ones are. We're going to focus on the Eastern Theater first. There's another place where the war is happening. It's out in the West. Now, again, this is the Western Theater, and again, it doesn't necessarily do it a whole lot of justice because it's going to go a little bit wider than this. But we're going to put a pin in the Western Theater for now. We're just talking Eastern Theater first. The first major conflict we're going to see taking place in the East is what's known as the First Battle of Bull Run. Also, the Southerners, they call it the Battle of Manassas, but because we're in the North, that's what we call it now. This is the first real pitched battle that takes place. But it's going to come in a very strange way. Because the North has all these advantages, and Lincoln never really accepts the Southern states as seceding. Do you remember what he always said they were?
They're just mad.
Just mad. We need to end this little rebellion quickly. Now, on this battlefield, this will be in Virginia, Lincoln's going to send his army, a much bigger, a much more well-supplied, a much better, I guess you could say, at least initially, organized army. Lincoln sends them to Virginia for the first major battle of the Civil War. Jefferson Davis, I believe I told you guys, never really had a whole lot of power. It wasn't designed to be that way. He wasn't supposed to have power. But he does delegate power very well. He's going to hand command of his armed forces to some very clever individuals. Yes.
Wait, isn't it that the Confederates believed in limited to local government?
Oh yeah, in the Confederacy, federal government has basically no power.
Yeah.
They have the ability to make war, and Jefferson Davis doesn't even have that much power. He hands that off. Now, in this first battle, we're going to see that one of the South's excellent military generals is in charge. Now, again, he shows up on the battlefield outmanned, outgunned, outsupplied. But he's a very shrewd individual. He is well aware of what he's getting into, because what we're going to see is he can outfox the North. He's the one who is more prepared to fight this battle because of his mental acuity. The North doesn't know this. The North shows up on the battlefield with more men, more supplies, more guns, and in fact, a military general who was, he was clever, but not nearly who he's up against. as these two armies are basically kind of dancing around each other, waiting for the battle to start, the people of the surrounding areas are looking at what's happening. These are civilians. And they say, is this going to be the first and only battle of the Civil War? This is history in the making. We should go watch. There are dozens of families with picnics going to the battlefield to watch the one and only battle of the Civil War. They believe. Let me just go ahead and tell you if you don't know. Don't bring a picnic to a battlefield. It won't go well. Here you have these families with their picnic lunches waiting for the battle to start. Now, I will say that, and I totally understand. The North shows up completely with more men, more supplies, and overconfident. They're going to face off against a very shrewd individual, General Stonewall Jackson. Now, Jackson was a West Point graduate. He went to the American Military Academy. He was very, very highly regarded. So much so that when he got out of the military, or when he got out of West Point and he serves in the American military, he's promoted multiple times. But time kind of drags on and he wants a different job. So he's going to get a job doing what he is best at. He gets a job as a professor of artillery at the Virginia Military Institute. He is quite literally teaching the generals he's up against how to use artillery. He wrote the book on it, literally. He said, here's how you use big cannon in this industrialized world. He looks across the battlefield at the Union general. Now, this is a quote. And he has his binoculars and he says, I remember him. He was at best a C student. He taught him how to use artillery. This is who the North is up against. Now, long story short, I will tell you this. The way that Jackson does this is absolutely brilliant. The battlefield itself is pretty much this big, open, expansive area. But on one side of it, there's a big collection of trees. Jackson can use this to his advantage. Now, let me just ask you real fast. Why do you think having some trees on one side of the battlefield is always an advantage? What can you use those trees to do? What do you think, Alan? What do you think? Cover, absolutely. You have some kind of cover. Sure, something else. Yes, okay.
Flanking.
Flanking, how so?
You can send your forces through the trees and then around.
So you're saying use the trees to hide in them?
Mm-hmm.
This is where Jackson is brilliant. And the guy he's up against is, quote, at best, a C student. He sets up his artillery all in a line, and he has about 12 cannon set up all in a line in this big open field. Jackson counts them. 1, 2, 3, all the way to 12. And he says, that's it. You take out those cannons, the battle's over. Jackson's going to hold his cannons back within these trees. What do you think the Union general sees? Nothing. He says, they didn't even bring the heavy cannon with them. This should be easy. When the battle begins, he opens fire. These Southern troops are very well disguised. They're basically hiding and covering in the trees. And all these cannon are very identifiable. Now, as the fog of war begins to collect, all this smoke, all this black powder going up into the air, it's really hard to see things. What do you think Jackson does?
Pull out the cannons.
Pull out the cannons. Start firing. Take out their cannons and the battle's over. He starts hitting these and knocks them out one at a time. The Union general believes Jackson doesn't even have cannon. What do you think he is thinking here?
Aerial strike.
Not yet. It says, we must be accidentally hitting ourselves. Stop firing the cannons. We can't see where these things are coming from. Does anyone else see a problem here? He has 12 cannons. Now, I should have said this. Jackson probably had about 4. It's a 3-to-1 advantage. and Jackson knocks out one cannon after the other as this Union general is saying, "Don't fire them anymore. We're hitting ourselves."